is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time, mounting session, mammoth mounting session, all the new Tolumnias. I got brain itch, I'll explain. I make a decision sometimes part-way through the day that something is going to get left till tomorrow, and then I try and settle down and I get brain itch that basically niggles at me to such an extent that I know deep down the job needs doing today, and I'm trying to put it off till tomorrow and I can't. So in the end I have to get off my proverbial and get on with it. Otherwise I just can't settle down. There's a good reason for this. This new set of Tolumnias were quite dry. They've had a soak, so they should have some hydration now, but I need to get them in a position where they can continuously hydrate for a few days. I don't want to leave them into soak. I'd rather just get them done and get them mounted, so that's the idea. No coin toss deciding between coffee and wine. The sun's setting, it's wine time. The idea, I was going to settle down and watch some snooker, but in the end I thought, nope, let's get on with this instead. So that's what we're doing. The other 4 mounts, 5 plants, have already had their hooks done, but I thought there could be some new people. This is a sharpened screwdriver, so I don't use it for doing up screws. It's got a blade on the end effectively that when twizzled makes holes in bark and pieces of wood very quickly and very easily, and it makes quite a nice clean hole. So that's what that gets used for. It really doesn't get used for anything else nowadays. Dedicated screwdriver for doing mounts. And then this is bonsai wire. It's very flexible, but it's strong. It means it can be bent into shape and then it'll stay there. Sometimes with cork bark you make a nice neat hole that's plenty big enough for the wire, and it closes up before you can get the wire through. So get the wire through, make an estimate how long I want the hook to be. It doesn't have to be exact, you can always trim them later. And then all I do is bend the long piece that's going to be the hook right over the top flat, and then get the end that sticks out. I expect my hands in the way, and bend that over the top and down, and then all I do is pinch that with the pliers, which grabs hold of it nice and tight so it doesn't move and flop around. Yeah? And then all I need to do is bend that upright and just turn it over at the end. Always make sure your hook is at right angles to the flat side of your bark, otherwise you'll have a wonky plant. But with this bonsai wire I can twist and bend it where I like. So that's that. So the other 4 are already done. Now the most important thing with this session is not to get the tags muddled up. So literally 1 plant at a time. I'm going to do the most awkward one first, because this one's got quite a long spike. So if we can just snip the string, snip the rope, it should just come off now. Jolly good. That's another reason for not leaving it in soak. That was relatively tight around the base of the plant. Now I don't want to lose the tag. The tag's important. This particular site, it goes to the trouble of making very nice decorative tags with a picture of the plant on. Now that can come in handy. I mean, this is effectively a hybrid. It's got Tolumnia Mo 01 on the tag, which must have some reference to the nursery, but means nothing to me. Now this is a single fan. The roots aren't that bad. They've been into soak for a bit. I'm not trimming anything. Tolumnia roots have a nasty habit of branching even when they look dead, so they're all going to stay. There's a little bit of older moss in there that's easy to take out with my fingers. Now the spike has decided to come out this way, so obviously that's the back of the plant this time round, and it will just be typical if the new growth decides to come out round the back. But so be it. In theory it should push the new growth out this side towards the light. Now that's quite a large one. So we'll pick one of the larger pieces of bark, and roots will go upwards and downwards with Tolumnias, and sideways and round the back. They will head off in all directions. So I'm deliberately going to put some up the back. Yeah, they can head upwards. They all help hold the plant. And then just lay it roughly where I want it. Spread the roots out. Or make sure they're capable of spreading out. And in this particular case I want them all to be touching some bark. So there was a loose one there, it was already cracked, as they say. That'll do. Now because it's difficult to hold the moss and tie at the same time, what we'll do with dry hands is get a length of fishing line. Effectively I might end up going around quite a few times, and I'd rather waste a bit. I need enough to tie the tag on at the end as well, so we'll get quite a long piece, and a little bit of wasted fishing line is not the end of the world, but if you end up half a turn too short, it is the end of the world. That can cause language, which we don't want on camera, do we? Right, so the first job, make a loop. I may not film all of these, as I say there's 5 to do, and once I've done one it's just a repetition. So what I do is a slip knot, so over the top, and then effectively you tie a knot around the stem, leaving a long enough end to be able to tie with later. If that bit's too short it serves no purpose, but nice long bit long enough to enable another knot to be created. Now that's a slip knot, it will pull tight. Yeah. So we can now get that over the plant to hold it in place. That's if it's big enough to go over the mount, of course. I'll go roughly the base of the plant with the first turn. Most of the rest of the winding is going to do nothing more than hold the moss in place. This is the one that will hold the plant, this first one. So just up from the base in this case. Then pull my slip knot to about the middle, because don't forget that's where my tag's going to go in the middle in a minute. Right, that's got the plant, now we can put a bit of moss on. Now with Tolumnias they must have a wet dry cycle basically, but initially with these I'd rather they had a little bit more wet than dry. So I'm not going to put loads of moss on, I'm just going to put enough on around the base, but leaving the root ends hanging out, if you see what I mean. So I'm just putting the moss quite close to the plant, not loads, it's just enough that when it's wet the roots will have a chance to hydrate before the moss dries out. Right. That's that. That's more than enough for a little Tolumnia. I could even say that in some cases could be a little too much. But these plants are quite dry at the moment, so I can always hook a bit off if I think it's too much later. And then all this is doing is holding the moss in place. Yeah, the plant's already secure, that's fine. And then we can turn it over, going very careful with that spike. Because I started with a loop, when I headed off in that direction to do my first turn it forms a V. That comes in very handy for tying knots. As soon as I can find the end, I've got a bit too much here. So if you go through the V, yeah, that you created earlier, and get hold of the end and pull, you've got something to tie against. Yeah, it gives you something firm to tie against, and of course you've still got your long ends that you left deliberately to be able to tie it with. So you can just put your knot round there. I've got wet hands and fishing line do not go together, and I always do a reef knot, which is right over left, left over right. Effectively it means using the same end. And then with my nice shiny tag, what I'm going to do with that is tuck it underneath so it doesn't waggle around and get on my nerves, and then just stick my end through the hole that's already made in the tag. These couldn't be easier, mounting these, quite honestly. And then just tie that on, and then that's the plant secure, the moss secure, and now the tag secure. Job done. So I've got wet hands here, it's messing me about. Gotcha! Again, just a right over left, left over right. It doesn't matter if you do it the other way. It doesn't matter if you go left over right, right over left, as long as you do the opposite each time, and then it forms a knot that doesn't tend to come undone. Snip my ends off, and because I've got pets, we do not leave bits of this lying around on the floor, because pussycats like to bite and chew things and play with things, and we don't want them swallowing a bit of fishing line. So that's that one done. Some moss, nicely held, one loop to hold the plant in place, and tag nicely tied on the back. So that's the process. That's one done. Get that one out of the way. Right, what else have we got in here? We've got another loose one with no little basket on the bottom. So same again. Got the string, get that out of the way. Now this one's actually got a few sheaths near the base that I will take off. Hidey holes for scale. That's where they love to get. Scale on Tolumnias love getting down in there. That's where they get. And then they bite into the base of the plant, often taking out a new growth. Now this is another one with the spike just starting. So we need to go careful of that, and obviously the spike and the new growth need to be round the front of the mount, not round the back. A little bit of older moss in there that can come off. Wouldn't be the end of the world if it stayed there. Not a brilliant set of roots, but I've recovered Tolumnias with far less roots than that. And I actually bought one that had about 3 little dangly roots that were dead, and it's still recovered. Yep, that'll do. Another sheath you can come off. Right, that'll do. Keep the tag. Oh, this is the this tag actually got a bent bit of whatever you call this stuff, but it's got the name on it. It's another one of these that's just basically a hybrid. This one says Mo 04, but those blooms do look attractive. Very delicate pink and white with deep dark red centre, so that should be nice. Now again, this is a larger one, so I think we'll go for another one like these for the larger ones. It gives the roots plenty of room to spread. So spike and new growth round the front, oldest one against the bark. Those roots will spread out nicely. That's good. Another manky bit of moss in there, we'll have that out. Right. Fishing line, not quite as much this time. I did waste a bit then, didn't I? Somewhere about there. I don't want to waste too much. Although I would imagine the amount of fishing line that's on that reel will last longer than I will. So again, slip knot. Plenty of tying room at the end. I've got to tie a knot to hold everything in place, and then I've got to tie another knot round the tag, so I need plenty of loose round the end. Over the top and round the base of the plant to get my initial pull and hold the plant in place while I faff around with the moss. Now, I don't pull this ridiculously tight because it is actually touching the fan and the edge of the new growth. It's just to hold it in place really. Oh, there's a lovely little nook in the bark there. We'll put the loop round that and that'll stop it moving down the mount. They do that sometimes. There we go. Pull that reasonably tight. Not in the middle, so that when I go to do the tag will be in the middle as well. Get some moss on. Again, I don't want much. Probably grow these with no moss at all, but to get them to take off quickly with no moss at all, it would be better if they had new roots actually starting that I could see, and then I might risk it. But all of my Tolumnias have always had some moss, and when this gets going the roots will come out all over that, round the back, over the top, so that little bit of moss will end up being next to nothing in comparison to the root system. So as I was saying, this is just to hold the moss in place. I'm not See now, there's a classic example of not having a long enough piece. So I'm just going to unwind it and make the loops a little farther apart. Because I'm one short. I would like to go round once more, but I can't because I've got a piece that's too short. That's what comes of being stingy. There's still enough to hold it in place though. Through the V, give me something to pull against. And put my first knot on. Get in there. Ugh. There we go, there's the tag. Tuck that down in there. It's going to hang off the bottom of the mount actually, but so be it. Stick one end through the hole. Like so. Aim, fire. Missed. Reload. Takes you 2 shots, you're in the wrong job. Okay, I'll just tie that off. There we go, another one done. That one's a little bit loose. I don't like that. I'm going to put another loop round. I've got a spare piece here actually that was where the other bit was too long. It's wobbling far too much for my liking, so I only need to go round once, but I just need a loop a bit higher up the plant just to stop it wobbling quite so much. I tend to find the roots will attach much better if the plant's firm in the first place, so I'm just going to put another loop round a little bit higher up this time just to stop that wobbling. Too many little sticky out bits. Gotcha. There we go. And we'll take this loop round quite high, but not pull it too tight. I don't want to garrot the thing, but just I need that extra security a little bit higher up the plant on this one. The other one was fine. This one's a bit loose, so I just need another loop. Pull that tight. There we go. And because I've only got one loop this time, I haven't got a nice V to make my knot against, so I just have to tie against the original slip knot. As long as it holds, that's all that matters. There we go. That should hold it reasonably still now. Loose ends. Right, that bit better. Yeah, that's a bit better. In fact, it's much better. So that's that one done. Right, now we're getting down to the little tiny ones. Or much smaller ones, let's call them that. Some Tolumnias are genuine miniatures. They don't all grow large. Oh, this tag's secured to these funny... I'm going to keep these little baskets. You never know, they might come in handy one day. These haven't been in here long enough, I think, to actually attach firmly to the little plastic pots. They're just threaded through the holes, basically. So that's not the end of the world. Now, what have we got here? We've just got a single fan here, but this one has signs that it's liable to push out its new growth this side. It's a guess. It's a complete guess when you've got a single fan. It often means it's been detached from a larger plant. A larger plant has just been split up and, you know, split up into single fans to then be sold on. So that's a little one. And this one is quite a long way off flowering, I suspect, this one. This is Jarrac Fern Hickory, and this is the one that so I'm trying to get the reflection off the tag so you might be able to see the picture of the colours better. This one looks very interesting. I like the look of this one. Now, is that the smallest one I've got? Yes, it is. Well, by small I mean short. Right, different type of bark this time. This is cork bark, the other was oak bark, English oak bark. Collected from fallen trees in the forest, not too far from where I live. On a day when it was absolutely chucking it down and I got soaked through my waterproof coat, all of my clothes right through to my skin in the middle of winter, and let's put it this way, I was not the happiest of people when I got home, because when I set off the sun was shining, so although I took my coat, I took it because it was cold. I didn't expect to get absolutely soaking wet, and I really did get wet that day. And I spent quite a long time working out the sort of trees to look for, because if it was a newly blown down tree, there's no way that bark would come off, because it was too new, it was firmly attached. But if the tree had been down quite a long time, eventually they do start to rot. And although the bark came off nice and easy, it wasn't good bark. As I say, it was like starting to get flaky and falling apart. So I gradually worked out that the look of a tree that was about in the right stage. I don't know how long they would have been down to make that, work, but certainly the newly fallen ones were no good at all. Right. Yeah, this is quite a young little piece. This is. And we'll get him around there. So although these roots are a little bit curly, they'll still spread out across there. Right, let me loop round. Make sure I go high enough up the plant this time that I don't have to go back and put another one round. That was a mistake on my part, that one. That first loop was just too low down. If the whole of the rest of the plant is above your first tie, or any subsequent ties, it's just not going to work. It's got to be able to hold the plant. Yeah, that's plenty high enough up. Almost too high this time. Go from one extreme to the other. Right, this one, so far, although it's the smallest plant, has actually got the best roots. These are good roots. They're plump, and I can see that as soon as they get any moisture on them, they go green. As Tolumnia roots get older, they get a browny look to them, and even when they hydrate, they still look brown. They don't ever go green. They're not dead. They're still working roots. They've just got old. It's only when they're fresh. They're nice and white, green growing tip, but after a year or two, they start to turn a browny colour and start to look dead, but I can assure you they're not. They're still fully working. Yay, and enough left over to do a decent knot this time. I can't get it right all the time, can you? Oh. Wet hands again. Just doesn't work. Ugh. Gotcha. Right. Get me tag on. Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting Tolumnia when this blooms. It could be a colour cast, but over here on this particular bloom, that red has a purple tinge, and here. And here. Well, if that's going to have red with a purple tinge on it with those other colours in the background, that's going to be pretty good. But it could just be a faded photo. It could be nothing more than that, and it's just going to be red. But one way to find out is look after it and get it to bloom. Oh, you would go down there, wouldn't you? When I want you up here. Come on. So my end that I want to tie has gone right down the back. Gotcha. There we go. Oh, something quite interesting. I was watching the news the other morning, And it was one of those times when I went and started to do something else, then started doing something else, and forgot to turn the TV off. And when I came back in, there was a programme about, well, criminals basically, fraudsters, you know, people who con people out of money and whatever. And those of you that have been with me quite a long time will remember I had to do jury service, and it was the case. It was on the telly. As soon as the guy's face come up, I went, I know you. We put you away. And yeah, it just went over the police raiding the place, gathering all the evidence, taking all the computers away. And yeah, it was quite, actually see the case. Obviously they don't show the court case, they're not allowed to do that. But you know, all the investigations and the work that was done and the amount of sheer money that that guy conned people out of. And he was deliberately picking on the old and vulnerable, you know, well out of order. It's funny, we went away as a jury, and we all knew what we, you know, we got in there and one guy said, right, well, don't rush this or we won't get our tea and biscuits. So I said, well, why don't we just go round and each say what we think, yeah, without any interruptions from anybody else, otherwise we'll be here all flipping day. So all go round and just have a say about what we made of the evidence for and against. And obviously you have a foreman on a jury, come on. And you know, that's the guy who sort of tells people to shut up, you've had your go, it's somebody else's turn, that sort of thing. But yeah, we came to the conclusion very, very quickly. But we dragged it out a little bit on the grounds we got free tea and biscuits. So yeah, that was a bit of fun. I mean, I don't want to actually do it again. Until I'm 70, if I'm selected, there are very few reasons to not go. Dead's one of them. If you're dead, you're not allowed, you know, they let you off. But apart from that, you know, oh, I'm busy at work. No, no good. If you're called for jury service, you've got to be in hospital basically, dying or actually dead. It's not far off that. But anyway, I was retired, so you know there was one guy there had 2 kitchens to fit. You know, customers waiting for those kitchens to be dealt with, and he had several places he had to go to get quotes sorted out. So he was losing quite a lot of money, and the amount of money they actually pay you for being on jury service doesn't compensate for your business. So some people lost quite a bit of money doing their jury service. I quite enjoyed it. I don't want to do it again, but I did quite enjoy it because I've now seen what goes on. I've experienced it. So I know I don't want to do it again. Oh, it's just such a long time, and there's so much waiting around and so much waffle goes on in a courtroom. That's all I can call it, waffle. And the repetition, going over the same stuff over and over again. And you can't fall asleep, you know. You can't sort of think, oh, I've heard all this before, I'll have a little doze. You know, you've got to pay attention. You have to make notes, and it's hard work, quite honestly. As I say, I certainly don't want to do it again, but I'm glad I did it once. And I'm also glad I didn't get called for jury service when I was working, because I was, well, apart from the last few years when I was just driving cars around, my actual career, I was self-employed, well, limited company, effectively self-employed, so, you know, every day not worked is a day's money lost, seriously, you know, so I'm glad they got me while I was retired. That loop is a little high. You see, I'm halfway up that new growth, so I'm going to drop that one down a bit. It's a little bit too high up. In fact, I'm going to go under that little nook in the bark. Let me just pull that tight again. As I say, and then I turn my hand and all the moss falls off. It has, that little bit's moved. Get back up there. Do as you're told. Gotcha. There we go. I should be able to go round 3. Yeah. There we go. Through the V. Something to pull against. Tie that off. As I say, it's just repetition really. Once you've done one, I must admit when I first started mounting things I found it a little bit nerve-wracking, because you know you're trying to hold things all wrong where you haven't sort of done it before. But you know, once you've done a few, it's just repetition. You remember what you did last time and just do it again. And if it didn't quite work very well the time before, but you can see how to make it better, then make it better until eventually it's just repetition. I mean, this is easy peasy, you know. I mean, I've had to, well, some people have actually seen back in the days when I had that 4-foot long dendrobium that I tried to mount. You know, I'm trying to mount it here and the cane was up on the cooker. That's not so easy. They're not all easy. You know, I've had plants that are like nearly a foot across, you know, with a mount like that sort of size. That's not so easy, and they need wiring on because they're heavy. But when you've got small plants like this that weigh nothing, that don't need a big mount, and you're using fishing line, it's basically easy peasy, isn't it? So that's one to go. What have we got left now? Ooh. Oh, one just fell out of its pot. Let me tag off. Oh, well, at least I know I haven't muddled the tags up this time. When I did the massive remounting, when I took all my Tolumnias off their mounts to decide which ones I was going to keep, because I did lose some, but they all got so badly infected with scale that they were eating away the base of the plants, leaves were dropping off, roots were failing, and in those days I was messing about with those wishy-washy soap washes, which down in those leaf crevices just isn't hacking it. So I lost a few. Well, I had 15. I ended up with 7. Now I've got 5 new ones, so we're back up to 12. I don't expect any of these to fail. I mean, it's like this one. That doesn't look like much of a root system, but these are viable roots. These are active roots. Yeah? So it'll take off. And again, this is another one that's got one fan and a new growth. So obviously the new growth needs to be at the front, not squashed in the back. Right. Last one then. God, it's nearly dark now. Sorry, they might not look dark to you because kitchen lights are on, the spotlights are on above me, so helps it bright. It looks like it's proper daylight when really it isn't at all. That's far too much. But, yeah, right, that's you done. Finished with. Oh, I didn't show you this one, did I? Let's get the wet off of it because it glares otherwise. Now this one's called Jarrack Firm Brown Brush. And if I can get the glare off of there, you might not be able to see it because of the glare. But this is a spotty one. So this is very pale pink, almost white, covered in little browny red dots, and then with the deep red centre with a bit of yellow. So, and the tiny little top petal and 2 sepals are also red with a very white edge, tiny little white edge there. Again, an attractive one. I'm surprised that, given that I've already bought some Tolumnias from this place, I'm surprised that when Lynn bought the set, she didn't end up with some that I already had, and purely by chance those were the ones I ended up getting. So I could have ended up with some duplicates. But then they do have, that particular nursery has a huge selection of hybrids, massive amount. Right, so we'll get that right above. See, I've got a lovely big crevice in there, so the plant's going to sit just above that crevice, so the new roots will go straight in it and burrow their way into the depths of that crease. Right, so we go. Oh, sheath, get that off. Right, this is another one. Now this one, I'm going to have to put the loop over the top of the new growth and round the back of it because it's low down. Yeah, and I need to hold this bit. That's the bit I need to hold firm. This bit doesn't matter, that little new growth, but I need it the turn about there, and that's halfway up the new growth. So I'm going to go over the top of the new growth this time, so that I don't need to worry about it. That'll just do its own thing and form its own roots and sort itself out. It's the main fan I need to hold tight. So a bit different this time. That'll also mean I don't need to go up quite so high. About there, that'll do. There we go. Right, I'm going to get a fair few of those roots down in that crevice. I like the idea of them burrowing into there. They do branch, Tolumnia roots, and often they branch, and it's the branches that attach, leaving the original root just sort of hanging. But once they get hold, they seem to grow an awful lot faster on Tolumnias. It's just a matter of getting some to attach. I don't find that the old roots ever attach. In other words, the ones that you start with very rarely attach. It's the branches that happen after you've mounted it and any new ones that come out from the base. They're the ones that attach. They attach fast and firm. They work really well. But the older ones, not so much. Have I got enough to go around once more? Yes. Only just. There we go. Right, where's my dangly end? That didn't come out right, did it? There we go. Right. Now I can stick these straight out in the grow room, find somewhere to hang them, and feel better. As I said, I just couldn't settle myself. I just sort of, in the back of my mind, I just kept thinking, that really ought to be done today, you know. Yeah, I'm going to make another, I know it's going to be right in the middle of the picture, but I'm going to make a hole, make sure I've got a whole bloom to look at, because otherwise it's just going to stick out the top of the mount and it'll look awful. So we'll trim that one, do that one a bit different. That's going to make tying it a bit awkward, isn't it? I'm sure I can manage to get it to stay there. Yeah, that'll do. Done. Right, there we go. So that's all of them done now. So all I've got to do, get them out in the grow room and find a bit of hanging space for them. The fact that these are newly mounted and not what I would call actively growing at this point in time, one of my hanging racks that faces the grow lights, which is where all my current Tolumnias are, there's only one or two plants around the other side of that hanging shelf. So I can put them all round there for now, because these don't need to go under the grow lights yet. They need time to settle into my environment and hopefully start some new roots in the near future. There we go then, some mounts. I can't imagine, I keep saying there's probably not going to be any more kitchen time this year, but I can get away with it now because there's hardly any of this year left. So if you think about it, I could be mounting or potting some stuff in the first week of January. That's next year. Yeah, so it's not this year. I don't think there'll be much more kitchen work this year, I must admit. Anyway, thanks for dropping by, and see you next time.